Okay, it's a big week as we head into Lincoln, Nebraska for the biggest game of the year for Rutgers Scarlet Knights so far. That is until the next game against Wisconsin. Nonetheless, this is going to be a game that gauges both where we and Rutgers and Nebraska is going forward. Let's get to it. Okay, Rutgers travels to Nebraska as 7.5-point underdogs. When I saw that come out, that's a little bit high. Maybe there'll be some late money coming in on Rutgers. I suppose that might happen. I think odds makers are probably going off what they saw against Washington and just reading the stats and the box score, 521 yards versus 299 yards. But I have to say, watching a Nebraska podcast do an analysis of this game, they hit the nail right on the head, talking about how it wasn't if Washington was controlling the game and running up and down the field and just not being able to finish drives and score touchdowns, where as Rutgers struggled. It was quite the opposite. Rutgers was kind of in control of this game, at least on the scoreboard. And you got the sense that as they got ahead, Washington was going to need to make some plays on offense to play catch up. And that's kind of what happened. Rutgers was up 11 points late in the game. Washington scrambles to try and get back in it. You never got the sense, except when it was 14-10 late in the third quarter or middle of the third quarter, that Washington was going to kind of take over the game. They were making, there was a little bit shift in the momentum middle of the third quarter, but they were getting their yards. But you sense Rutgers was kind of in control. They just needed to make some plays and not make big mistakes, and that's how it turned out. So props to the Nebraska podcasters for pointing that out. That being said, Nebraska, really good team. They were a favorite amongst analysts at the beginning of the year to take that next step forward with Matt Rule. And I kind of agreed. They had a really good defense last year. They were kind of ugly. They wanted to run the ball, play defense. Quarterback position was inconsistent. But now that they have Dylan Raiola, 5-star transfer from Georgia, he's solidified the passing game and has given them really good balance on offense. And that kind of worries me because they can run it, they can throw it. Their running game, as Coach said, is running back by committee. It's not a dominant kind of running game where they want to run the ball down your throat, but they have enough rushing yards off the passing game of Dylan Raiola. Coach also mentioned their wide receivers' size. That could give us a problem if we're not tackling well in the secondary and in the linebacker, and we're not. But Nebraska's offense averages about 260 yards passing per game. That's number 40. So it's pretty good, not elite, but pretty good. And average yards per play is about 8 yards, which is pretty good. Number 39, pretty close to their passing game statistics. Raiola doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. I think he has one interception. 70. I was surprised to see this because I've watched him, and his completion percentage is 70%. 100 of 142. Almost 70.5% completion, 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That interception rate is number 11 in the country, but he is vulnerable to the sack. They're only number 55 in the country as far as sack rate. So if we were getting better pressure and more sacks, I'd feel a little more comfortable with that. Having a big, strong-arm quarterback who can make all the throws. Which I prefer over the athletic, mobile quarterback who seems to give us trouble. Nonetheless, Raiola can give us trouble as well. Rushing, Nebraska rushes for about just under 145 yards per game. Number 72 in the country, but they're not looking to control the clock, run the ball down your throat. They want balance in their offense. They only average about 4 yards per carry, which is about a yard less than we do. So even though they average just under 145 yards per game, it's not a dominating game with our porous defense so far this year against the run. I don't want to see that 4-yard average, go up to 6 yards. We saw Coleman for Washington averaged like 9 yards per carry. He was only averaging like 5 yards for the year. Third down offense for Nebraska. They're just okay, about 44%. Okay, that's pretty decent. They've given up 7 sacks, so there are opportunities. Watching some analysis of their offensive line. They are occasionally out of position, so there are some opportunities there where if they're out of position, we have to take advantage. We can't just miss. We have to actually get there. Fourth down conversions, not a huge sample size, but they're only 1 for 5. So if we do get to a 4th and 1, 4th and 2 late in the game where we have a slight lead, we stand a decent chance of preventing a first down. All that being said, with Nebraska's potent offense, really they're so balanced. They have 9 touchdowns rushing, 9 touchdowns passing, and then 2 returns for touchdowns. Like us a little bit in the beginning, their competition wasn't great. Texas, El Paso, Colorado, which is, all offense, no defense, a typical Big 12 kind of team. Northern Iowa, Illinois, which will be a game that we have to gauge ourselves against, so that was a tough game. And then Purdue not doing well this year. I think they 1-4, 1-3, whatever they might be, and they've been getting blown out. They were in this game late in the third quarter. It was 3-0, and then Nebraska went on a run and wound up winning 28-10. We can't allow them to go on a run. So even though Nebraska has displayed some really good balance in their passing game and running game, we have opportunities there to get some wins because I feel Washington's offense is more explosive. I just feel with, it's a more rhythmic passing game with a more dynamic running game. I feel if Washington got their yards, but I think we can do a decent enough job against Nebraska for us to have success. But their defense is where Nebraska wants to have their bread and butter. They give up 274 yards per game. I think that's 8th in the country, or was it 18th? I think it was 18th. Actually, it's number 12. They give up 188 yards passing per game, but their rushing game is where their strength is. They give up 85 yards per game, number 15 in the country, and only 2.8 yards per rush. I'm going to tell you, if we only average 2.8 yards per rush, and we have like 80, 90, 100 yards, this is going to be a game that we're not going to win. We need to be able to have success. Now, what we're going to try and do? We're going to try and run those slow developing RPOs to Kyle up the middle. Nebraska is going to be ready on many of those. But as long as we can get some chunk plays when it matters, and we can get 130, 140, 150 yards and balancing that out with some plays in the passing game, will be okay. Nonetheless, Nebraska's defense on third downs, they give up about 40%. Last week we were 7 for 15. We did a really good job against the Washington defense that was is better in pass defense, not as good in run defense. And on fourth down, Nebraska's defense, not very good, 50%. So we have some opportunities there that if it's 4th and 1 and you're in the red zone and you're not sure, or if you're, on 40, 45 yard line, you want to continue the drive further into Nebraska territory, that's something to consider. Points per game, they're 9th, only 12.2. And they have 5 sacks. So it's not a daunting front line, but it is a good defense, and I do have concerns that their overall scheme and physicality and size could prevent us from making the plays that we need to play. By the way, Rutgers is number 17 on third down conversions, so that'll be a good matchup for us on third down against them. Against Illinois, so here are some things that we have to do. Like Nebraska, we have to have balance. We have to be able, so, Athan was 14-24 last week, not gaudy numbers. 1 touchdowns, no interceptions, no turnovers. Luke Altmaier, I watched this game and 21 to 27, 215 yards. So he wasn't necessarily throwing the ball deep, but he was accurate on those crossing patterns and those screen passes and those side quick outs to the sideline to give them enough conversions to keep the sticks going and then eventually get into the red zone and score touchdowns. He had 4 touchdowns passing. That's pretty impressive. Illinois rushed for 166 yards. 39 rushes, 4.3 yards per carry, almost 400 yards total. If we can average about 4.5 yards per carry and get to where we want to be in the 150-yard range against a really good defense and have Ethan have some success in the passing game, that'll go a long way to beating Nebraska. It's going to be similar to Washington in that Washington's defense is very good and their offense is very productive, but we absolutely positively have to get chunk plays in the run game. So that'll, getting those chunk plays not only gets you the first downs, it gets the running game going and the offensive rhythm going, but it allows you to have some play passes underneath, and I think that's going to be critical. And along those lines, Ethan has to be accurate. He's been very accurate so far. We need to have those quick, efficient passes underneath. And if we go a step further, for another thing that will be important, the receivers absolutely, positively must catch the ball. Last week we had 3 drops that all 3 of them would have been touchdowns. Or if not touchdowns, really close to being touchdowns. Ian Strong, KJ Duff, and Kenny Fletcher all dropped balls with wide open space in front of them. Just one drop like that on a play where you have nothing but green in front of you can change the complexion, not just of the series and the drive, but for the game. So 1 touchdown difference in a game like this will make all the difference. And along those lines, let's get Daimir more involved. He only had 2 catches for 15 yards last week. We're going to need him to be more of a force in this game, catching those balls in space underneath. A couple times against Washington on 3rd and short. It was like 3rd and 4th or 5. He came up half a yard short on those quick slants inside. Let's get him the ball in space, and if we can get him open downfield and beat a corner, that will help loosen things up, spread the ball around, and we'll have some success on offense against a really good defense. Convert 3rd downs. Rutgers, I'm surprised to find this out. We're number 17 in the country in converting 3rd downs. Nebraska allows about 40%. So there are opportunities for us there to be made. And if it's a 4th and 1, and it's late in the game, and you have a lead, and you don't want a field goal, you want a touchdown, Nebraska gives up first downs on 50% of 4th downs. So, again, not a huge sample size, but it's all to say that there's opportunities there. So get those first downs and critical 3rd and 4th downs and touchdowns, not field goals. Nebraska, on offense, 72% in the red zone, which is, okay. Washington was 85%. So if we could win the red zone and 3rd and 4th down conversion on both sides of the ball, we stand some good shape. Defense, easier said than done, and we talk about this every week, and we'll talk about it every week until until we don't have to talk to anybody about it anymore. You have to rattle Dylan Raiola. Easier said than done. Big, physical, strong quarterback who has mobility, but I think his skill set allows him to, I don't want to say force the ball, but make throws because of his physical attributes. I've said this a little bit high. Now, Nebraska's wide receivers high point the ball very well. Coach said in his preview, game preview comments that they're very tall receivers, some of the biggest set of wide receivers that we'll face. So Raiola's arm strength and athleticism, he can fit a ball into a window, but sometimes it's a little high. So if you can rattle him and hit him, preferably tackle him, get him to the ground, but he could upset his rhythm, not like Will Rogers, where he's strictly a rhythm, air raid kind of quarterback, or you want to throw him off, but you want to hit his arm, force that ball to go a little bit high, a little bit off target, a little bit wide, a little bit behind, whatever it might be, to prevent him from completing, 70% of his passes. It's doable. We're going to have to, and if he does complete them, we're going to have to tackle well. Our secondary has come up short, and actually the whole defense has not been great at tackling. We saw with Coleman last week. He was breaking tackles all over the place. Nonetheless, on defense, again, get him to the ground. We saw Will Rogers last week. There were 2, maybe 3 times where we had him wrapped up, and one late in the game. It might have been on that drive where they had the ball deep in their territory. It was 3rd down, and we had him wrapped up, and he was able to get the ball off and completed a long pass to Boston for 1st down. That kind of extended the drive, and then they were able to score that touchdown. But if we can get them to 3rd down, 4th down, and make some plays against them, I don't care if you tip the ball, bat the ball down, get in his face, rattle him a little bit, whatever we have to do to prevent finishing drives and contain the run game. Don't want to see running back room that averages 4 yards per carry, average 8 yards per carry. We saw Coleman last week. He averaged, 9 yards per carry. Until that game, he was only averaging about 5 yards per carry for the year. And he wasn't getting the ball a lot, but that's mostly because they want to throw the ball. But the run defense, if we're going to make progress, and if we're going to go make progress overall as a defense with our tackling, with our coverage, and with our assignments, this is the game where it needs to come together. And it's okay if you give up some yards, give up some points, but if you make the plays that you have to make in a 24-23 kind of game, I'll be fine with that. 5-0 going into Wisconsin. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your week. We will have some last-minute thoughts coming up towards the end of the week, and do this thing and move on to Wisconsin and take care of a Wisconsin team that's pretty vulnerable. We'll see you the next time.